Self-reflection presentation, Capstone 700 by Krystle Lambert. What I've learned, growth. Look at leadership differently. So since starting the post MBA program, I look at leadership differently. I learned early on in core classes what the difference was between leadership and managing. I also learned that there are values that I'm just not willing to compromise on, even when it comes to business, but that I may have a few vices like hubris and complacency that could prove to be a challenge to me in my future business endeavors. Leader versus manager. I learned that a leader is far more influential and takes more work to be effective. A leader actually wants to take the time to do more than just meet goals and objectives. A leader cares about their people and how they are utilized and grow throughout their journey with each other. I realized that in the military, I am more of a leader than a manager, and that some key aspects um, I have learned already. I have been focused on them, but during my class, I learned that, what things I should put more emphasis on and more thought into, and what things really matter. Financial aspects. I am still learning the finance side of business, but I do have more of an understanding of what is needed to run a business, forecast, and solidify cash flow. It is way more complicated than I imagined, but it is nice to have a stronger foothold on the accounting aspects, the budgeting, and formed piece of business. I had no idea what a pro forma statement was prior to this MBA course, but I'm getting there. And then I also learned a lot about green initiatives, organizations, and how companies really have a duty to try and help make their communities and the world a better place. I wasn't aware of just how deep companies go to secure their brand as green, with packaging initiatives, foundations, and even overhauling products completely to give them a competitive green edge. So I found that part of the course very interesting. As far as challenges, maintaining discipline and attitude was tough for me, especially with the group projects. I have a very alpha like personality that I have to constantly work on keeping in check. I will say that during some group activities, I have caught myself needing to recenter and focus on what is important. I have learned a new level of patience and I am working on it every day. I can see that this learning should carry on to my everyday work life, especially when communicating with my workforce. I want to be an encouraging, positive force to my team. Financial aspects, again, this piece proved to be a challenge for me with a chemistry background and very little business background. But I hung in there and came out successful with a bit more knowledge than when I first started. This is an area that I need to continue to work on, especially since I want to be an entrepreneur in the near future. I want to be able to understand my business finance. And then juggling school and family life, working while obtaining an MBA has been one of the hardest things I've had to do in my life. I experienced a PCS move, a mini deployment, a new position, a mother and two growing children while going to school for my MBA, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. I am thankful for the strength to get through all of the long sleepless nights and late work assignments. I appreciate all teachers who understood that. All of us are not fresh graduates with time on our hands, but thank you anyway. Program recommendations. I think a full review is needed for all course material with an emphasis on final submission dates. There was a lot of confusion about exactly what day assignments were to be turned in. The Blackboard instructions don't always jive with the rubric or the teacher's instructions. Also, some financial PowerPoint slides have wrong answers for calculations. Excuse me. I found this hard when going back to use the examples in the PowerPoint after classes were recorded and over. Um, let's break out groups and classes. I understand that the MBA program is to help us learn to adapt to difficult challenges and work together in diverse groups. This has been a challenge, and in some classes, like virtuous leadership, made it painful to endure 3 hours of teams because every few minutes there was a quiz or a breakout group that could have been answered simply by asking a question to everyone. This is probably a dream, but is it possible to teach material ahead of time instead of reviewing it after an assignment has been given? and a poor grade has been earned. The financial and analytical courses were good for giving homework prior to the lesson being taught. Real learning didn't happen until after the assignments were reviewed and talked about amongst the class. The fact that the classes were MBA level and some form of self teaching is expected was the reason given to me as to why we couldn't be taught the material first. It was really, really tough. And then Capstone is very intense. I recommend only taking one course when taking a Capstone. Maybe more classes can be offered at a given time. I know COVID has caused a lot of issues with this. And then better communication when classes are not being offered on campus. Last minute adjustments made it hard for life adjustments. And again, I'm sure COVID had something to do with this. MBA leadership, innovation has been talked about from the beginning to the end in this MBA program, and I enjoyed learning about it. I was not aware of how key innovation was to a company's success. You hear about the blockbusters and the many other businesses that aren't around today, but you never really stop and think about what really happened to the companies and why. Transformational leadership. Since this course, I have been working on modeling my leadership strategy after a transformational leader. I want to be able to create a culture where all opinions are needed and it's okay to have a bad idea or to not all agree with each other. I want to be that leader that can inspire others to do great things and to make people happy about coming to work. Inclusion and diversity. I want to create an environment that is inclusive of all individuals and that leverages everyone's strengths for the success of the mission. In the military, this is it's huge because the workforce is extremely diverse and it could be a shame to miss out on, great opportunities. Virtuous leadership. When it comes to virtuous leadership, I learned about the names for some things like hubris, greed, and fraud. This was one of my favorite sections. Um, I knew what they were, but I didn't think of them in the sense of I could be affected by them or that I might already have some of it going on. So I did learn that everyone is susceptible and that good leaders are open to exploring how these different things may affect them. I learned it is important to look at yourself and see where you may be lacking and how you can prevent these behaviors. Strategy versus plan. Found the strategy versus planning portion of the program interesting in the strategic integrated marketing course. I used to assume the planning aspect was also the strategy piece. Now I have learned that the strategy is how a business chooses to attack the different objectives of the company. I found how businesses work together to better each other when they have homogeneous relationships and goals. Was interesting. Um, and then as a leader, there are a lot of decisions that have to be made and research that has to be gathered in order to make good choices for a business's future. So overall, I think that I just really appreciated the way the MBA program was taught at this school. I like the emphasis on trying to teach us from a new perspective uh, instead of the old, I guess, normal way an MBA was taught. So I appreciated that. I found it very interesting and it has been challenging. Thank you.